Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review, and in this video I'm going to review the triple split of Rectal Smegma, Cliteater and Last Days of Humanity. This is a short split album containing brand new material from three of the biggest, most notorious and most extreme bands of the Dutch Goregrind and Pornogrind scene: Rectal Smegma, Cliteater and Last Days of Humanity. Let me tell you, that's a very interesting lineup for a split, and obviously when I saw this album getting announced I was so moist. It's mainly because of Last Days of Humanity, since for me the band has done one of the greatest albums in the whole Goregrind scene I've ever heard, and that is Putrefaction in Progress, an album known for its short tracks, relentless blast beats and just a non-stop onslaught. Definitely one of the greatest and most intense Goregrind albums I've ever heard, and it's definitely one of the more inspirational ones, trying more grindcore stuff and trying some of the Goregrind and grindcore stuff myself, with all of those very sick and twisted sounds being part of my influence coming into some of my projects. Getting through some of the other bands, Rectal Smegma was a band that I discovered back with their most well-known and most infamous album being Keep On Smiling. Now this is an album that for me it wasn't something that great. I wasn't really a huge fan of this album. A big portion of this album was just samples, mainly scat porn samples, and even instrumentally and musically it was nothing that would really grab my attention. So as far as it has some good moments, this was an album that felt more of like a comedic sense in the genre, or like a parody, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a very standard thing happening in the Goregrind and Pornogrind scene. It's just a sort of humor that didn't really land for me, at least. On the other hand, Cliteater is a band that I didn't really know that much for. I just saw some of their album covers being parodies from multiple other bands like Death, Napalm Death, etc, etc, and all of the words like being replaced with clitoris. The band has a massive obsession with clitoris. With all of that being said, out of the three I would say that Rectal Smegma have the best side. They have the least amount of tracks, only 5 in this split, but they also have the lengthier ones, and the side from Rectal Smegma ends up being the longest, almost covering less than half of the portion of this album. And mainly this album pretty much follows your standards of a Goregrind album. It has 19 tracks and it goes for around 18 to 19 minutes long. Pretty much the perfect formula for a grindcore album. Now, to my surprise, as I said, Rectal Smegma have actually some tracks that go closer to a more hardcore punk feel, with some of the simple riffs, with some of the drums that feel sort of like a deep beat section, but they still have their extremely punchy and very heavy blast beats, and also with some very interesting vocals. But like I said, I was pleasantly surprised with what Rectal Smegma presented with this EP, especially with tracks like Fingerbangin, Orang-Utan, and also with Cunt Drunkula, two moments that have some very good riffs. And I would also say that even production wise, this thing sounds really solid. On the other hand, when you get into the side of Cliteater, the production and the sound is like night and day. The sound from Cliteater is far more raw, way more lo-fi, especially like the snare drum on this thing. It literally feels like they start smashing a pan that they randomly found in the kitchen, and this makes for my favorite type of snare drum, the one that sounds so bad it becomes amazing. And it especially works really well with Goregrind music, Pornogrind, and especially in blast beats. The side from Cliteater is the shortest one with 6 tracks, with tracks going for around 1 minute long and less. and it's a very nice side. Not every moment over here shines, but what they offer is certainly pretty brutal and pretty menacing. And then finally we get into the last portion of the split with Last Days of Humanity, containing 8 tracks, and you get pretty much what you would expect with Last Days of Humanity. We have these enormous and disturbing titles, we have some very nasty and punchy blast beats, we have a very raw and brutal production, and in general the whole sound of it, they still got it. Though compared to everything Rectal Smegma and Cliteater did with their side, when Last Days of Humanity come, they don't offer something much more to the whole mix. I like the use of sampling in some of the occasions, there are also some very sick blast beats and some very sick breakdowns. But there are also some of those very short tracks, because Last Days of Humanity have the shortest tracks on this album, that they don't really offer that much. This is an example with tracks like Ectomy, Officering Misogyny, Excrement from Life, and with 13 reasons why somebody else should not have to pick up your mangled body. Apart from all of this though, it's just 3 big names in the Goregrind and Pornogrind scene that are attached in one split. It's not something mind-blowing and it doesn't offer that much to the genre, or even to the 3 bands that are presented over here, but I can say that some of their most brutal and most intense stuff are contained in this split. And for what it is, this is a very good and a very solid project that fans of grindcore music and fans of these bands are definitely going to enjoy. So yeah, a very solid album containing 3 of the greats in the Dutch scene. I'm going to give this split a 7 out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why, and what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.